Jayson Tatum disrespected as a superstar. The summer of Tatum disrespect continues. We're going to talk about it here on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thanks to Blockbuster brand, it's holiday season. Drop Drew in the mix, and 3 from KP. No, we not on the Knicks. Flushing competition like Al on Giannis. Juice and Big Deuce, still Beantown's finest. Banner 18 going up in the rafters. Watch the C's game in locked on NASA. Karalis on the breakdown. Clutch like a tip from D. White on the breakdown. John on the mic documenting domination. Matter pen a back bay, it's all C's nation. Rain and J's, how we started raising business. How we finish locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. Peace.
And welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. I got you covered every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Yeah, it's one more Monday here. We got a couple more Mondays before we go to 5 days a week again. So make sure you are subscribed. Still much more podcasting here than you're going to find anywhere else. Free, fresh, soon to be daily again. I'm John Karalis. If you're new to the show, I am been covering the Celtics now for nearly 20 years. I'm an old man. Now I'm doing it for Boston Sports Journal as a beat writer. I'm also the author of 2 Celtics books. The newest one is Built Different, a commemorative book celebrating Banner 18. Find that wherever you find your books. Today's show is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase of last-minute tickets. Terms apply. Today's show is about the, disrespect for Jayson Tatum. Thank you, ESPN, again, in their draft of superstar players that you're going to pick to start a team. Jayson Tatum, not high enough for my guy, Tom Westerholm. What's going on, Tom?
How's it going?
Oh, great. Oh, great.
Oh, good.
It's nice to talk to you again after a long layoff.
It's been a long time. Yes.
So ESPN, look, they're doing what we're doing, right? The Hoop Collective, fine podcast. Respect all of those guys greatly. Yes. We're around Tim Bontemps all the time as beat writers. He's at the Garden all the time. I like all of those guys, but we disagree with the way they have characterized Jayson Tatum. They did a snake draft of guys in the league that you would start a franchise with today. So, number 1 pick overall, Victor Wembanyama. Makes sense?
Yep.
That's a guy everybody would pick first. They went Luka Doncic second, which I'm already like, okay, interesting.
Seems high.
Yeah. Seemed high, but they were saying like, this is a no-brainer. In fact, their debate was, hey, some people might say Luka number 1. I don't know that Luka is a number 1 pick for the guy you want to start your franchise with. I would have picked Jokic second myself. I thought that was the no-brainer. I thought no-brainer was Wemby, Jokic.
Yeah. Like, so to me, the no-brainer is like the debate, right? Is like, do I want to try to win a championship now or a few championships in the future? And that's the Jokic Wemby debate, not the Doncic debate.
That's right. I feel like you've got, and they were talking about this. I think they're right in saying there's like a 5-year window probably with Jokic, but he's so damn good. He is so good that you have a chance to win if you do it right. And side note, I'm not sure that the Denver Nuggets are doing it right. You have a 5-year window moving forward to potentially win a championship with Jokic. Wembanyama, you're not winning a championship right now.
No.
Especially not like if you're just starting with him, the way the Spurs are built, it's still a few years away. Like he has things that he needs to work on. Okay, great. He's so damn good already that yes, you bet on him. Luka, I mean, is it me because I just watched him lose to the Celtics and lose because they were attacking him over and over and over again? I mean, am I the only one who saw the Celtics win a championship by attacking Luka Doncic defensively relentlessly?
That's So, but that's been the conversation that we've been having since before the finals, right? Like, and that was one of the things that I think drove both myself and you so crazy when we were talking during the finals. It's like, is nobody else watching this? Am I crazy? What is going like? I'm watching the Boston Celtics take one look at Luka Doncic and say, like, food, chicken.
Yes.
I want that.
Yes.
I want that matchup. Give me that matchup specifically. And if you don't like I want to run every single thing. We talked before about all the other guys we thought the Celtics would target, and instead they targeted Doncic specifically as much as possible. And that was their whole plan. Like, to me, that guy at 2 is very high. And look, the Mavericks just made the finals, in a very competitive Western Conference. They just came out of it, and he was, the entire engine behind all that. And I have a lot of respect for that. This is not a Trae Young situation, to be clear. I do not feel Trae Youngy about Doncic, but
right.
that high seems like a lot to me.
I think we forget that the Mavs weren't exactly tearing it up the beginning of the season, and it took that mid-season trade. Remember, wasn't the story? Oh, the Mavs made a mid-season trade. They brought in was it Gafford and he's the guy. Like, all of a sudden things started to fit. Now, we can say this about any superstar. You need the right complementary pieces. And part of what makes Luka so great is his passing. And if you run pick and roll with a guy who can finish the lob, and now they had Lively and Gafford and guys like that can finish the lobs, that now all of a sudden it becomes, that vertical spacing makes Luka dangerous. All of that stuff is true. But I guess I don't know. I was surprised, and I feel like this is just maybe the Boston perspective. I knew right away from the beginning. It was the first thing that I said when the Celtics were playing the Mavs. Attack Luka. Just go at him right now, from the beginning, and they did, and it worked. And I was like, great. I don't know how you can come off of a finals where that was the case and say, he's my number 2 guy to build around. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't go 3 or 4 or 5, because he's a triple-double machine and he's an incredible offensive player. And frankly, I think the disappointment of the finals could spur something in him. He's still a really young player.
Yeah, he's really young. Yep. And I'm sure that's a big part of the calculus here, right? Is like there's still all that room to grow. And like you're factoring in, that he's kind of, if you're looking on a timeline continuum, you got Wemby here and you got Jokic here, Luka's in the middle of that. So like I do get that, right? That there's that makes sense.
Okay. But we still haven't gotten to Tatum yet.
Right.
No. And so
not that close to Tatum yet, to be honest.
We're not even close. This is and so okay, I already disagree with Luka at 2. He should be 3, 4, somewhere in there, 5. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 4 is an incredible pick. The Thunder. Well, you know what? Let's take a second. Let's chew on this, because the next 3 picks, we've gone through 3. Wemby, Luka, Jokic. We're going through 3 more before we even get to Tatum. And this is why we're like, what is going on? Didn't we just watch this guy win a championship? And we're talking about, who do you want to start your team with so you can win a championship? And we're still not at the guy who literally just did the thing that you're trying to do. Let's talk about that in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Now, I know therapy, it can be very beneficial for a lot of people, myself included. And I think sometimes you just need to talk through some things. Maybe sometimes it's just as simple as, why is Luka Doncic ranked so much higher? I can't believe it. It's driving me up a wall. But from something simple to something more complicated, you can talk through it with somebody at BetterHelp because it's all online. It's convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You do not have to go from office to office around your home or your work or wherever trying to find somebody. You're limited in that way. And if you don't click with that person, now it can be very discouraging. This is all online. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch anytime, as often as you need for no additional charge until you find somebody that clicks. So you can never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go to betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. Give therapy a try right now with BetterHelp. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. Catch me on Wednesday with Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans. We host every Wednesday. So we'll see what we're talking about on Wednesday. No, don't know yet, but we had an interesting discussion last week about Damian Lillard and his legacy. We'll probably continue that, and because I think there's a lot more to talk about there with him and the Bucks, and we're going to continue our conversation now with the Bucks and Giannis. So go check out Locked On NBA wherever you get your podcasts. Watch the show on YouTube. Okay, Tom. So we've gotten through those three. The next three picks were SGA. You need to unmute yourself. Giannis and Anthony Edwards. So 6 picks before you get to Jayson Tatum. I don't know where you want to start with this.
Okay, so I think the easiest one for me to start with is Edwards, where and I think with all these guys there comes the caveat that we're not trashing any of these guys as stars. Like, we're talking about the upper echelon here. We're talking about the best of the best. We're talking about guys who are going to make all NBA first teams and lead their teams, deep. That's all. I hope that's all unsaid, right? Like, we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Anthony Edwards to me is pretty wild ahead of Tatum, because it's like, I mean, okay, so this has been one season of not one season of thinking he's going to be great, but one season of like proving it, kind of deeper into the playoffs. And I like, do people think that Tatum's teams have been stacked every year that he's been in the playoffs, to the point that we discount all of the playoff success? Like, that's a lot of playoff success that we're sort of, pushing to the back in favor of somebody who's had 1 year. It's not like his team was not stacked. The Timberwolves team had a lot of very good players on it too. So to me, the Edwards one is the one where it's just like, okay, I think we are jumping the gun here a bit and like putting people ahead of Tatum that, I mean, so this season, right? Like Tatum's stats were a little bit down, but we all saw why that was. And the result was a championship. Whereas last year, his stats were right up there with your SGAs, right up there with, all of these guys. Like, he's capable of doing that and has taken a whole step back from doing that for the betterment of his team. And it's like, if you're starting a franchise and you're like, I want a guy who's going to help me win championships. Hey, how about the guy who is capable of doing a lot and is willing to step back slightly to help you accomplish that? That seems very valuable to me.
The history of what Jayson Tatum's been able to accomplish is the most glaring thing here, because you have on this team, Luka, Jokic, SGA. He's coming into his own like that. He's not going to have a ton of history. Edwards not going to have a ton of history. Giannis has some history. Obviously won a championship, but Tatum has been there because Tatum has been close, but not over the top for so long. It's a detriment to him. And frankly, the thing that's worked against Tatum the most is that this concept of when they've called on Tatum and say, hey, well, the way the Warriors beat the Celtics, was to get Tatum and Brown to try to do too much. And when they tried to do too much, they struggled, they failed, and the failure was put on those two guys specifically. And that goes down as a mark against Tatum. Never mind the fact that he got them to this point. Never mind the fact that he saved the Celtics in multiple series where they were out and not capable of, or on the verge of being beaten. Tatum was there to save those guys. So a lot of this stuff that historically has happened has gone down as a mark against Tatum, as opposed to being marks for Tatum, building up to he's finally learned how to win a championship.
And I think, he doesn't get, he probably doesn't get enough credit. And I also think, like, when you look at, and I think that kind of plays into, right, the Shea and the Anthony Edwards and all of that, where it's like these guys are getting credit for stuff that, I don't know. I mean, their teams were also very talented and all of that, and they haven't gotten their very talented teams as far as Tatum has. Obviously, they're a lot younger. Sure, totally. But I think it's also interesting to kind of look at Giannis, who I think I would take Giannis over Tatum, but I have to think about it harder than I think most people probably would, just because when you look at how easy it is to build a team around Jayson Tatum, this is a guy who can get you buckets, right? Can get to the rim. Something's going on with his 3-point shot. Would love to see that. That starts to come around. All right, great. Then we're talking about, like, then I think like that answers a lot of these questions. But, like, can do everything defensively, can do all the stuff. Like, I think he's probably a little bit easier to build around maybe than Giannis in some degrees, right? Where there's things that Giannis can't do. He's not ever going to be like a great shooter or anything like that. And and that does not stop him from being a super duper star all-time player, but I mean, Jayson Tatum is very easy to build a franchise around, very easy to build a champ. I mean, Celtics had to make like a lot of big moves, but that, like, Tatum's versatility, Tatum's ability to do so many different things opens up a lot. And I feel like that has to factor in as well when you start to think about, like, where you're going to start building a franchise.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think this would have been different if Jayson Tatum won Eastern Conference Finals MVP and Finals MVP instead of Jaylen Brown?
So it's a good question. Maybe. I also think it's tough timing for Tatum coming off the Olympics too, right? Where it's like we've there's been it's been the summer of Jayson Tatum, but there's been a few buts. There's been the Eastern Conference Finals, the MVP. There's been the Finals MVP. There's been the Olympics. There's been some stuff where it's like,
That's a good point.
That didn't totally go his way. It went his way a lot, but it didn't totally go his way.
Right. Let's explore this. Let's take a second here. Let's explore this, because to me, it came down to like three people's decisions. And if three people had a different vision, then this entire conversation about legacy completely changes. We'll talk about that in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime is going to get you these last-minute tickets to whatever you want: theater, comedy, sports, Major League Baseball. They do have Major League Baseball tickets. They're an official Major League Baseball ticketing marketplace. So very simple to go and say, hey, I decided I want to go to a Red Sox game, or whatever game you might be around if you're in a different city. And you just go to GameTime, you open up the app, and you start cruising around. The closer you get to the first pitch, prices tend to dip. But again, you can go to a concert, you can go to a comedy show, you can go to a theater show. You just go and you open up the app, you toggle the all-in pricing, you click that on, and you'll see no surprise fees when you go to check out. You get your seat view, a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy it, so you know what you're going to see before you get there. And they have a lowest price guarantee. They will credit you 110% of the difference if you find that same seat in that same row section for less money somewhere else. You'll get that 110% of the difference credited. And they also have the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying your concert tickets, your baseball tickets, all your tickets with GameTime. You download the GameTime app, you create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. I used it to buy tickets to the Red Sox. You can do the same thing. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKED, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out the Locked On podcast for all the other teams, especially when the Celtics start playing again. And you go post-game, listen to Locked On Celtics first, then you listen to the other team to get their take on it. It's interesting. You might see some things, you hear some things about things you didn't notice during the game. It's good to get both sides so you kind of know what you're looking for next time. All right, let's get back into this conversation with Tom. And you look at the Eastern Conference Finals voting, right? It was 5-4, Jaylen Brown. So if Tim Bontemps, Doris Burke, Gary Washburn of the Globe, Jeff Zillgitt of USA Today, if any one of those people, Joe Varden, if any one of those people had just said, Jayson Tatum, then Jayson Tatum becomes Eastern Conference Finals MVP, and the entire conversation changes. Now, Finals MVP was 7-3, so a little bit more of a different, a little more spread out. But there's a couple of these people, if they change their minds, let's just say 2 people, then it's a co-MVP. And Jayson Tatum gets Conference Finals MVP and co-MVP. Now, you made a good point about the Olympics. That changes, I think, the perception. If he goes to the Olympics and he plays and he starts and he plays well, not even great, but well, then, if he got more opportunity from the beginning, then that could have changed a lot of things. The whole point is, okay, we've got 4 people, Steve Kerr, any one of the people that voted for Jaylen Brown in the Eastern Conference Finals, and 2 of the people who voted for Jaylen Brown in the NBA Finals MVP. 4 individuals, if they had just done those things differently, which is within their power and very easily, there's plenty of timelines where that does happen, then Jayson Tatum is seen completely differently by everybody. This whole legacy talk is different. The disrespect thing goes away. He's not going on a revenge tour like we talked about last week. He's not, and he's picked probably 4th on this list if all of that other stuff happens, right? Like would he be picked above Luka if he was the MVP, if he was the guy? Like, I don't know. I feel like, and the reason why I say it this way is 4 people. It's not a lot of people. Now, Steve Kerr is an important person, but it just takes a few opinions to shape the entire concept of how a player is perceived. Jayson Tatum didn't have to do anything differently, right? It doesn't, the way he played, everything that he did, nothing changes. I'm not talking about anything Jayson Tatum did. I'm just talking about if 4 people who were not Jayson Tatum had different opinions and made different decisions, the exact same thing Jayson Tatum did would be viewed differently. And I think that's where this whole thing becomes unfair.
Yeah, and once again, I think we're having the conversation between ourselves that Joe Mazzulla will probably try to have, it doesn't, 4 people's opinions change and you're seen completely differently. You just got to keep doing the same thing you're doing. Like, I feel like these are all things that, once again, he's going to hear straight from the coach. But
I tell you what, I know once Joe Mazzulla plays this podcast for everybody, which I'm sure he does, then he'll be like, oh, that's another good point by Karalis. And they'll go, yes. And we'll all move on happily ever after.
For sure. That's for sure going to happen. Yeah, no, I think that's all true though, right? Like, and it's I mean, look, it's one of the weird things about, like it's realistically, it's one of the weird things about trying to control your legacy in the NBA is like
Yes,
you don't get to like you
that's
can,
right.
and I mean, there's things that you can control, and again, not to continue to sound like the man, but controlling what you can control is, it's kind of a, a talking point that many NBA coaches will hammer home, and certainly Joe Mazzulla. But that's it, right? It's like you can control how you react to an off shooting night. You can control the things that you do to try to help your team win. You can control your effort level on defense. You can control these things. What you can't control is how people are going to vote for Eastern Conference Finals MVP. What you do know is that if your team loses in the Eastern Conference Finals, there's no chance that you're going to win MVP. If your team loses in the NBA Finals, there's very little chance that you're going to be picked the MVP. So all you can do, all you can control, is try to do the things that help your team win. And I think, to me, the crux of the argument for Jayson Tatum changing absolutely nothing, to your point, right? Changing nothing about how many points he scored, how much he played at the Olympics, any of that stuff. If you change absolutely nothing, the case for Jayson Tatum comes down to he did all of the things that his team needed him to do to win a championship at the expense of some of the counting stats that factor into the way that he's discussed. That is really, I find that to be very impressive, and, like a big point in his favor in any of these conversations.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody talks about sacrifice, and like we jokingly said at the beginning of last season, what's Jayson Tatum's the only one who doesn't have to sacrifice. Well, what does he have to sacrifice? He's going to start. He's going to play. He's going to play 38 minutes.
Yeah,
he's going to do whatever he does. He doesn't have to sacrifice. But you know what? He
kind of
did.
did.
He
kind of
did sacrifice.
Yep.
He gave up some of his points. He gave up some of his shots. He gave up, and he has the ball in his hands all the time. He doesn't have to give up anything that he doesn't want to. And he did. Look, I don't know where Jayson Tatum ranks with all of these guys. There are obviously players who are special and magical. And as I've said a million times, I'll make the comparison again. Jayson Tatum is like the kid that you stuck in front of the piano and said, you're learning piano. And they started him at a young age, and he learned, and he went to, the Boston, conservatory, Berkeley School of Music. He can go in front of the biggest stage and play Beethoven and Bach and all that stuff. A guy like Luka is the kid who, at the same age, went up to a piano and just started playing things by ear, and people were like, whoa, that's incredible. But he doesn't have the same level of discipline as the guy who learned, and the guy who learned doesn't have the same level of feel as the guy who played by ear.
Yeah.
And they're both playing the same arenas, and they're both just as good. The guy who plays by feel is going to make some spectacular plays, because he's going to get onto that keyboard and he's going to be like, whoa, I can't even imagine putting that combination of things together. And he's going to do things that people remember and go, oh my God, he played the most incredible thing I've ever heard. He made the most incredible pass I've ever seen. Whereas Tatum is just going to go out there and be like precise. The drive, the kick, the everything, the decisions are going to be great, because he's going to be the guy who executes, and he still learns along the way, but he's the executioner type of guy. He's just going to go, I know how to do this. And is he going to make the same special magical plays? No, not necessarily, not in the same way, but he's still going to make plays. But people fall in love with the magical stuff. And because somebody has the ability to do something magical, they discount the guy who has learned and built and has just become an incredible professional at this. But they're both at that same level. It's just a matter of how they're perceived. And it's perception. All we're talking about here is people's perceptions. And that to me is the biggest difference between these guys and why Tatum tends to fall in these rankings.
I was talking to somebody the other day who was mentioning that they feel that greatness is like often considered like something you've never seen before, right? Or something unique, as opposed to, like singular excellence. It's more something you've never seen before. Like something I've never heard before, right? Like to use your musical example, it's like, I've never heard this before. This is so, as opposed to like somebody who comes up with something completely new on guitar against somebody who can just absolutely shred and hit a million notes, and like they're very technical and precise, but it's different, right? And I think that is kind of not that we've never seen somebody like Luka before, but he is a little bit more unique. Whereas Tatum feels like a little bit more of each part of his game was very slowly built and was very carefully crafted, and so much of his game was just piece by piece by piece by piece by piece, until what you have is this amazing basketball player who we've seen in fragments before in other people, because he just took things and built something. And I mean, I don't know that. Yeah, it's not as it might not be as unique as like a Jokic or somebody like that, where it's like man, I have just never seen the Twitter joke about like a 7-footer with lunch lady arms like dishing out passes like this. This man is amazing,
throwing a 3/4 court alley oop from out of bounds. Like, oh my god,
right. But Tatum can do everything like and that, I mean, a lot of value in that.
There is incredible value in that. And it the matter is, it comes down to personal preference.
Yeah.
And, you want a guy that you can give a book and say, here's all this music, learn it and play it. And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Versus a guy who's like, don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. And he gets on stage and he figures it out.
Book. I'm writing my own book.
And you're like, both are extraordinarily special.
Yes.
And there's a reason why Jayson Tatum has been perennial all NBA first team, is a perennial all-star. There's a reason why the Celtics won a championship. We talk about having, the depth and all of that, and it's great, but he did great things. And he and Jaylen and everybody, like there's a lot of people were involved in this, but he and Jaylen both led the Celtics to a championship. He is as big a piece. And just because a couple people voted a different way, that's their opinions. But you can't change that, and you can't change, like you said, you can't control what other people think. But Celtics are in a position to win multiple championships, and very few players do that. Yeah. Very few teams do that. You got to have the right players, special players, and he has a chance to be that. So they can say what they want, they can put them where they want, but we know what we got in Boston.
But what are they going to say now?
Tom, thank you so much. I always appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate you, man.
And I always, every single day, appreciate you listening at home, in the car, jogging, showering, whatever, watching the show on YouTube. Thank you so much. This is a tough time of year, and a lot of Celtics fans are enjoying other things and maybe not Celtics podcasts, but those of you who continue to listen and watch, very much appreciate you. I would love it now if you shared the podcast and told everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.